And she was the one who invited me to speak, and she had found me through these videos. And she said something that really stuck with me. She's like, in our school district, we didn't have pencils. We didn't have enough textbooks. We did not have the bare necessities to teach these kids. But what we did have was internet access and your videos.
Oh,
And
wow.
that, yeah, exactly. That hit me like a ton of bricks
Uh-huh.
because here I am, happy go lucky, quirky curator, just putting these videos out there because it's fun. And then,
Mhm.
oh, okay, suddenly this is important stuff.
Welcome to the People of Pathology podcast. I'm Dennis Strank. On this podcast, we explore pathology, laboratory medicine, and forensic science. This is part 2 of my interview with Anna Dhody. So in part 1, we talked about Anna's career as a forensic anthropologist, which took her from Belize to Harvard to Peru and eventually to the Mutter Museum. Today, in part 2, we'll get into some of her projects at the Mutter Museum. She eventually left the museum to start the Dhody Research Institute, and we'll talk about her vision for this new endeavor. Okay, here's part 2 with Anna Dhody. Now, eventually, you did decide to leave the Mutter Museum. This was actually
Yeah.
not too long ago. Why was it that you decided to leave?
Well, we had a change in leadership from the top. There was a new CEO that came in. She lasted about 2 years and then left. And then we had 3 interim CEOs that were taking on that position on a part-time. And then we had just new leadership coming in.
Hmm.
And when new leadership comes in, they have different priorities. And so the priority at that point was the fellowship, and it was less about the museum. And that's fine. Leadership makes the decisions they want to make. But it went from what happened was a looking at the museum from the point of this is a asset to the greater institution to this is a liability of the parent organization. And that's what I felt like it was, that was the kind of tone it was taking as a lot of fear based around the institution in terms of, well, what happens if this could happen and this could happen? And, at the time we had a very, very strong social media presence. We had the YouTube channel was the third largest YouTube channel in all of Philadelphia, not Philadelphia museums, all of Philadelphia.
Okay,
And
wow.
yeah, and that's the thing that in a lot of places would have been considered an accomplishment and again, an asset, but for some reason was interpreted as this is a liability because this many more people know about us. And if somebody doesn't like us, we could get canceled. And there was just a
Mm.
lot of fear and paralysis going on. And the things that I realized that I loved doing that I had been able to do while I was there under the previous leadership was I was able to create the Mutter Research Institute. So I was able to actually do scientific research with the collection, which was amazing. And then I was able to do social media. And again, that's one of the things I fell into. You have to remember, YouTube didn't exist when I started my position. When I started the Mutter,
Oh, yeah, that's
we
right.
were, in like watching all of these platforms rise like islands from the ocean, kind of going, what are they going to turn into? And we had some great directors of communication that really kind of steered us into doing social media. So I started doing social media, not really understanding what it was, but going, again, this is fun. I'm getting to show people the collection that can't make it physically into the museum.
Hmm.
And a good example, like you're sensing a theme here of this is fun or this was an accident. But there's not a lot of square footage in the museum, and so we're often working with collections in rooms that are dual purpose. So my quote unquote office area was also had storage in it. Sometimes it had workspace in it. And so a lot of the times I would have something interesting on my desk and I would call my husband and be like, hey, guess what's on my desk? And it was usually something, and keep in mind, he is not in the medical or museum professional. He is a musician. And so
Okay.
I would be like, I have a teratoma on my desk. He goes, what's a teratoma? And I tell him, he's like, I don't want to play this game anymore. And so I literally was like, well, if you know what, you might not want to play this game anymore, but I bet some other people would. And
Yeah.
that's how Guess What's on the Curator's Desk, the video series. That's how,
Okay.
that's how it started. Me harassing my husband is how that started. And
Wow.
then the next thing we have 100 episodes. I
Oh,
should
wow.
say that
Okay.
he did write the theme music for it.
Okay.
So good collaboration. Yeah. So it, I can't even imagine any other workplace where you could say, "Hey, you know what? I have this weird idea. Work with me
Hmm.
here." And they're like, "Okay, you want to do
Right.
a video series of guessing games on random, objects of the collection on your desk?" Okay, but you know what? Turned into a pretty popular series.
Right.
And then, but what it in terms of social media and our videos and and the YouTube channel, it really picked up during the pandemic because we were shut down.
Hmm.
And it was like, okay, well, now what? And we realized, well, we better pick up our social media because we want people to remember that we still exist. Our doors might be closed, and at this point, we didn't really know how long they were going to be closed. Remember how it was all going to be like 3 weeks, and then that wasn't the
Right.
game,
Yeah.
right? So it was very scary for us because we didn't know when our doors were going to open. We didn't know people were going to come back. So we kind of decided, what are we going to do? Well, and I was like, well, let's just do a tour. Let's just do a virtual tour and remind people that when the world reopens, there's a pretty cool place that people might want to check out. And so
Mhm.
we did this. I remember like just coming to the museum, it was shut down. The city was empty. I drove in and it was just so surreal because the entire building was empty except for myself and maybe a couple of people from Calling Grounds and Jonah, my videographer at the time. And I had done, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of tours before. So he just pointed the camera at me and I pretended that like I was giving a tour to a group like I've done, many times before. And then we put it out there. And I don't know how long, because time at that time, wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, I have no idea. But eventually it got to 1 million views. And
Wow.
that's not a small thing for, again, a museum that is very small.
Right.
Um, so that was a big deal. And then it was really funny because it would just so happen that the day I filmed the tour was the day a human heart was delivered to the museum. And I should probably tell you the story about that because just ending it there would probably be mean. But
Hmm.
so I
Okay.
I had created like this living donor program. I was really interested in getting we still were actively collecting. The museum had while I was there actively collecting not only from other museums that no longer were collecting human remains or finding it from pathology departments in hospitals, but we were collecting from individuals who are still alive and wanting to donate parts of their bodies. And so I called that, I differentiated that as I said, this is our living donor program. And so we had a few living donors. And then I was approached by this lovely gentleman named Rob. And at the time, he contacted me because he wanted to donate his skeleton after he died because he had acromegaly, and so which is a pretty rare condition. And he's like,
Yeah.
I've got acromegaly. This is the things that it does, and blah blah blah. Do you want my skeleton? And I was like, absolutely, thank you. And then that was, and oftentimes you get people to contact you and you don't hear from them. So I hadn't heard from him for a long time. And he contacts me again and says, hey, so little twist, turns out that in about 3% of patients with acromegaly, they develop cardiac complications. And he was unfortunately one of the unlucky 3%, and he needed a heart transplant in order to survive. And so he was
Okay.
on the wait list and he said, I'm on the wait list. And this was pre-COVID. And he was like, do you want my heart, my OG heart, my original heart when I get my new one? I was like, abso-freaking-lutely. I think I
Hmm.
actually said that, abso-freaking-lutely. Because keep in mind, I am a professional. But when somebody offers you their heart, I mean, come on.
Yeah, that
It's
doesn't happen every day.
Yeah. When somebody offers you your heart, it's a no-brainer.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
All right.
Any sorry. Oh my goodness. Anyway, and so of course, as luck has it, so what we had to do is it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of conversations and paperwork with his team in New Orleans. So we worked with his transplant team in New Orleans, and there was paperwork and all these things going back and forth for months and months and months. And everything was settled. And then COVID. And
Hmm.
if you remember, New Orleans was really disproportionately hit hard. And
Yeah.
so Rob and his wife decided to go east to North Carolina where their daughter was living. And he was already not in great shape at this point. Like he was getting really close. And by the time, and so he lets me know, he's like, change plans, not going to be in New Orleans, going to go to North Carolina to Duke. And so by the time he and his wife in their RV get to North Carolina, he almost immediately goes into the hospital. So we went from having months of negotiations and conversations with one transplant team to having days/hours of conversation with the new transplant team. And I have to give credit to Rob. This is a man who was in bad shape. He needed a new heart. And every single conversation he was having with his doctors, he was saying, and don't forget, my heart is going to the Mutter. Don't forget, my heart is going to the Mutter. Like everything. He brought a Tupperware to his transplant surgery just in case they didn't have a container for his heart. Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
being prepared.
That
Wow.
is dedication. That is preparation. That is a man who
Hmm.
wanted his heart to come to us. And so we went from like 0 to 60 in terms of like getting all the paperwork done. It was insane. And yet
Hmm.
somehow we managed to get it done. And again, credit where credit is due, which is 99.9% of it to Rob and his family for being so tenacious and insisting. And that if it hadn't been for him, obviously this wouldn't have happened. But the transplant team was also great. And I think it helped that some of them knew the museum. They knew who we were and not just a bunch of randos who wants his heart. It's like, no, we
Right.
want to use this for educational purposes. And so that hence going back now to the day that I filmed the tour, I happened to be there, and my videographer was there. And as we were leaving the museum, somebody was like, "Hey, this box just arrived with your name on it, Anna, and it's got a bunch of biohazard stickers on it. And what is going on?" And I was like, "Oh, yes, that's mine. Thanks. Thanks. I'll take it from here." And
Hmm.
I think Jonah was like, what gives me Joe by the way, Jonah, he has been with me through years of putting up with me. He just kinda gives me a side. I was like, "What's in the box?"
Oh boy.
I can't remember exactly, but I think I said something along the lines of, "Hey, do you trust me?" And I think he said something along the lines of, "Absolutely not."
Mm. Okay.
Totally fair. But I said, "I have an idea. Let's go down to the lab and do an unboxing. Let's unbox this, in real time in the lab." And giving Jonah credit, he was not. We had already worked a full day and everything, but he came down with me. And
Hmm.
I should there's another funny side note on this is that we had given all of our medical equipment to the hospitals. Like we had given them all of our gowns and bonnets, and I think most of our gloves and everything had gone to the medical establishments to use because remember, we were short on everything, especially
Oh, that's
masks.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Hmm.
Um, and so I had realized that all of my scalpels, all of my everything, I couldn't find a sharp implement anywhere. So I ended up having to use like a rusty, dull U-line box cutter. And that was the only sharp implement I could find. And we do this. Jonah just puts the camera on me and I just unbox this human heart in front of the camera.
Wow.
And I was really excited about it. And I think, I can't even imagine and looking back on it going, what was I doing? But I guess my enthusiasm showed through and it
Hmm.
got, hundreds of thousands of views and when we put it out there. And what was really funny is again, I'm not very savvy when it comes to trends and things going viral or what people are liking to watch because I just don't know that. So I didn't know that unboxing videos were a thing and that people would routinely watch people unboxing video games and makeup and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
so we put out an unboxing video, and what happens is, we had our fans were watching it and going, okay, this is par for the course. Yeah, this is Anna's crazy. This is what she does. Cool.
Mhm.
But you had a whole slew of unsuspecting people that were minding their own business, unboxing Mario Kart or whatever it is that they're unboxing. And then after they're done that video, YouTube's algorithm decides, hey, you liked that person unboxing that. You'd like to see this crazy middle-aged lady unbox a human heart, wouldn't you? Here you go. And so
Oh, wow.
that
Okay.
ended up being, again, an accident. It was, you know,
Mhm.
like, again, are you sensing a trend here of
Yeah.
accident, like stepping in it? But in this case, it was great. And my favorite thing was reading the comments because these are some clearly shell-shocked people who are like leaving comments like, I don't know what happened. I was minding my own business, watching makeup. The next thing I know, there's this lady holding a human heart in her hands, and I just could but then they would say something like, "I couldn't smash the subscribe button fast enough." That was what
Oh,
that's what it
okay.
was, that consistently people going, "Holy heck, I didn't even know this existed. I didn't know the museum existed. I didn't know things like this could happen. I didn't know any of this. I wanna know
Mhm.
more." And that's when we decided, "Oh, okay. What people are really interested in is obviously the human heart aspect. That's really cool and everything. But when you looked at the comments, a lot of people were like, "Oh my gosh, what's next? That heart doesn't look so good." Because it had been
Mm.
vacuum packed in it was dry, it had been preserved in formalin, so like all the color leached out, it looked kind of brownish gray, and it had been vacuum packed into a Tupperware so forcefully that it retained the rectangular structure, shape of the package. And so obviously we needed to do a lot of work to make it look like it was. And so people started asking that question, well, what are you going to do next? And so we were like, oh, series. Maybe we should do a series on
Mm.
this where we literally walk people through all the different steps of what happens from the time you get a biological specimen like a human heart in the mail. And people like, how did you get that? The answer was FedEx. What happens? What's next? And so we started doing a whole series of videos, very detailed. Like this is what we had to do to get it to get back to its original shape. This is how we put it in the jar. This is how we did all this. This is how we did all that. And people loved it and really were following the journey. And the best part was that exactly a year after we did the initial unboxing, Rob felt well enough to come and travel to the museum to visit his heart, to watch us put it on display for the very first time. And then we did like a 2-hour interview with him, two
Oh,
plus
wow.
hours of interview with him. We interviewed him with his wife, his friend who worked at the museum at the time as well, who was the one who kind of got it all started. It was amazing. This whole showing everything that was happening. And what it was doing was kind of showing kind of the liminal spaces of museum work and of science and these these spaces that people don't often get to see. That either they never get to see, they don't think that they're allowed to see it, or they don't even know it exists. And that's what I kind of
Mhm.
call the liminal spaces of science or of museums. And so
Okay.
it was so much fun. And I it was great. But then what happened is that the new leadership came on board after the pandemic and just decided that's not what we do. We don't do this. And when that happens, I always say you have two choices. You can either accept that or you can leave.
Mhm.
And I ultimately said the things that I love doing the most, that I loved doing the most while I was there, is I loved doing the research. I loved working with the collection in a way that nobody had worked with it before to ultimately, hopefully, save lives. I found that incredibly rewarding. And I love doing these types of videos, where I could educate people and entertain them at the same time, and not I think, some people think that that's mutually exclusive. You can't be educational and entertaining at the same time. And I disagree. And so
Yeah.
I said, again, I can either stop doing the two things I love doing the most, or I could go somewhere where I could do that. And then I
Hmm.
quickly realized there is no place else that
Right.
exists that I knew of that that I could do that. And so what I ended up doing was saying, I wonder if I could just make a place. And that's what I
Right.
did.
This is the People of Pathology podcast with our guest, Anna Dhody. We'll be right back. If you think it would be nice to have a helpful reference about digital pathology, I have some great news for you. Dr. Alexander Zhurov has written a book called Digital Pathology 101. All you need to know to start and continue your digital pathology journey. This book will help you whether you're a complete novice or a digital pathology trailblazer. You can get a copy of it by following the link in the show notes. LabVine is an interactive online learning platform where laboratory professionals learn, develop, and discover by sharing knowledge and building on each other's experience. The platform provides global access to internationally accredited laboratory-specific courses and other resources developed by lab specialists, like us, for the laboratory industry. LabVine is free to sign up, and you can use the link in the show notes to get started. Now for the rest of part 2 with Anna Dhody on the People of Pathology podcast. So you made your own place. You started the Dhody Research Institute, and now you can do these things that you love to do,
Yep,
right?
exactly. Interesting is that the former director of the Mutter Museum, who retired at the end of 2019,
Mhm.
Dr. Robert Hicks, on top of being the best boss in the entire known universe, was a good friend. And he had been kind of following the saga with me of what was going on at the museum. And I called him up one day, but I basically said to him,
I'm
I have a batshit crazy idea, and I need you to tell me that it's a batshit crazy idea so I can get my head out of the clouds and go look for a normal job and get on with my life and figure out
okay.
my next steps. And so I told him
Mhm.
about the idea for my research institute and what I wanted to do and what my goals were. And he's like, basically, I'd love to be able to tell you that's crazy, but I think if anybody could do it, you could do it. And on
Mhm.
one hand, I'm like, he believes in me. Yay. And the other hand, I was like, oh man, now I gotta do this. This is terrifying, actually. This,
Yeah.
creating your own nonprofit from scratch is, ah, it's a thing. Uh, then I approached another one of my best friends who you might know, Dr. Marianne Hamill.
Oh,
Um,
of course. She's friend of the show.
yeah, love her, and said basically the same thing. I'm like, not in so many words saying, talk me out of this, please. What am I thinking? And
Mhm.
again, she's like, these are the two things that you do really well, and I think you could do it. I'm like, oh man, you too? And then so they're like, well, fine, fine. All right. You believe in me. You're gonna be on my board of directors. So both of them are on my board of directors. So
Okay. You're
I
you're
I
teaching them a
convinced them.
lesson, huh?
Exactly. This is what you get
Yeah.
for believing in me.
Nice.
But again, I could not have done it without them. I have three incredible boards of directors, including my another amazing friend of mine. And we just decided, all right, let's do this. And we did. And so I resigned in March of this year, and we got our nonprofit status, I believe, in October.
Okay.
Well, actually, it was excuse me. I we got our nonprofit status in October of 2023, and because I had started work on this before I left in my abundant spare time, and then I'd resigned in March of 2024, and then we went official in August of 2024. And so
Gotcha. Okay.
it's been great. It's been amazing. We've started filming new series and making connections and research connections and more video connections with other museums in the area and abroad and all over the place. And it's just been an incredible ride so far, and there's a lot more to do. but I'm
Right.
really excited about what we've done so far and what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely hear it in your voice. It seems like it, you've got kind of two goals going on. I guess it's just science communication in general, but also like increasing accessibility to this information, right?
Absolutely. I think that was one of the things I learned again by mistake. I
Hmm.
wouldn't say by mistake because, I think when you're putting yourself out there and doing videos, sometimes it's tough to read the comments. People might say not so nice things, but we were really lucky in that the comment sections of the videos at the museum were overwhelmingly positive. And
Hmm.
and people would say things like, again, I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know that you could do this for a living, or I didn't know this. Sometimes people didn't even know certain disciplines of medicine existed, or certain aspects of forensics, or again, all of these things, people were so incredibly enthusiastic about learning more. And so what also we found out, we would read the comments and go, like I did a video on an extremely large bladder stone. And the next thing you know, people are Googling it and saying, oh my gosh, I just went down the rabbit hole about this and I just learned so much. So if you give
Hmm.
people that kind of catalyst of interest and enthusiasm and introduce them to something so many times, so many people, like, especially with the access that we have to the internet now, they start learning themselves. And then they would ask follow-up questions. Or in the case of, we did a lot of videos, again, these patient-centric videos where we would interview somebody who had like a huge uterine fibroma, showcase and put the patient's narrative first. And then what that does is when you encourage that and put that out there in the comment section, it almost turns into like this community support network of people who have gone through very similar issues with uterine fibroids, or similar
Okay.
types of conditions, where they are finding a community that occurred by accident surrounding this video. People shared
Hmm.
their stories, and their stories of pain, their stories of misdiagnosis, their stories of medical distrust and how they overcame it or how they didn't. And what was really interesting to see too is, again, this was not meant to help people diagnose issues, but again, when you have these forums, what happens is that people will watch this and go, whoa, 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 wait a minute. I have XYZ symptoms. Are you telling me I might have ABC? And people chiming in going, I'm not a doctor, but I really think you should see one. And this is my
Right.
story. And people finally getting a diagnosis and getting treatment and coming back to the comments section and saying things like, if I hadn't seen this video, I would still be in agony, or I would still have a no diagnosis. I would still think I was insane. Or because, the doctors kept saying, oh, that's no big deal, or that's just the way it is, when in reality,
Hmm.
it's not. So it was more than the sum of its parts. These videos that we put out because we just wanted to inform people became much more than the sum of their parts. And it made me realize that there is such a need for this type of content where you put things out there, you tell people, hey, this exists, or this information is here for you. And it's a jumping off point, or it's a way to kind of steer people down different tracks. And so what I want to do is I want to continue that with looking at medical objects as touchstones for points in history and points in human health and things like that. But I also am very interested in talking about medical and scientific career paths for people. Because again, these are things that are not widely accessible to the general population to know that, hey, there are these really cool, neat careers in medicine, in forensics, in science that I want you to know about because I think they're really cool and you might
Hmm.
too. And then saying, that's the first step. The first step is just letting people know they exist. Then the next step is, and here's some of the training you would need to do for this. And here's some of the things. And hey, oh, by the way, here's a person who does this job and we'd like to interview them. And that's what I'm be planning to do. I want to do an entire series on different types of medical and scientific STEM professions that are
Okay.
might may be considered niche, or people might not know about, but are really interesting, accessible, and are needed. Because I know more
Hmm.
than anything that there are specific jobs in forensic field, in pathology, in science that we're unfortunately experiencing more attrition than we are people coming into the field. And that's,
Yeah.
you know, the first step to remedying that situation is letting people know these jobs exist and that they're needed.
I like this a lot. I think you're really onto something here because there are a lot of these jobs. I mean, certainly when you and I were in school, that we didn't know what they were, and even now, I think some of them have made maybe a little bit of progress, but not as much as they should have. And I
Yeah.
think that this is a great opportunity for you to do that. I like this a lot. This is great.
Thank you. And I mean, I think you know that like a lot of people they think STEM and they think, oh my gosh, terminal degree, decades in school,
Right.
all these things. And that's not always the case. So I'm just really excited to do that. And we also just started, remember I talked about that a series I did called Guess What's on the Curator's Desk. And we're doing a series that of course is in no way, shape, or form like that. It's called What's That For? And we travel around to different private collections and different museums and we look at their collections and we look specifically again at medical objects, specimens, objects, and we invite the viewers to guess what it is. And then we'll tell them the answers and then give them a little bit of information. And what's fun about that is that we decided make it a little bit more interactive. We offer like, okay, you want to pause the video here, talk amongst yourselves, make it classroom friendly and because one of the things we found out is a lot of the guess what's on the curator's desk and a lot of our videos were used in schools. And
Oh,
because
interesting.
the feedback we got was, this is really great, but it's hard for us because we would do a mystery object. We would give the answer to the previous mystery object in the episode and then introduce a new mystery object. And you'd have to tune into the next episode to find out what it is. In YouTube and doing that, it was kind of hard to track the episodes in linear progression. So it was
Sure.
hard to find the answers. So we listened. And I actually, on my website for my new institute, I have a survey that really asks people, what do you want to see? How do you want to see it? And there's a special section for educators because we really wanted to know what educators were wanting to have in their classroom to supplement their teaching or to offer fun interludes or things like that. So
Hmm.
we listened. I think that's a big thing is ask questions and listen. And so we have them all in the question and the reveal and the answer are in the same episode. So we filmed our first series of about, I'm going to say 8 episodes at a private collector's home. And then we chose, I think, 2 or 3 objects to do deep dives because that's another thing is like, we don't have we want to make these small, short videos that you can watch multiple ones in a sitting or in a class but we also know that our viewers love peeling those onions and getting those layers. And so we
Sure.
offer in a couple of videos, we let the collector, we're like, okay, out of these 8 objects, tell us 2 or 3 great stories about one of these objects. And so just putting the camera on him and letting him go and having fun with that. So this is all the fun, exciting things that I wanted to do when I was at the museum or things that I wanted to do and couldn't do or things that I was doing and trying to improve on. So
Hmm.
again, I'm having fun, but I'm hoping to bring people along on this fun journey while we learn new things together.
Yeah, it sounds like you're going to inspire a lot of young people into checking out some of these careers. And the fact that it's being used in teaching, used in schools, that's amazing. That's got to feel really rewarding for you.
It really is. And again, I learned about that by accident. Like I went and I was giving a talk at an anatomical conference and I was talking to a person there and her previous career before she had come there was she was a high school science teacher in a border town between Texas and Mexico, a very, very underfunded school district. And she was the one who invited me to speak. And she had found me through these videos. And she said something that really stuck with me. She's like, in our school district, we didn't have pencils. We didn't have enough textbooks. We did not have the bare necessities to teach these kids, but what we did have was internet access and your videos.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, exactly. That hit me like a ton of bricks
Uh-huh.
because here I am, happy go lucky, quirky curator, just putting these videos out there because it's fun. And then
Mhm.
oh, okay, suddenly this is important stuff. I've got a responsibility, and there are young kids that are going to learn about things for the first time through me. I want to do a good job. I want to make sure that
Yeah.
but interestingly enough, that doesn't mean I'm going to just go and turn into like Bueller and start being all prim and proper. Absolutely not.
Right.
Another thing she said is I grab those kids' attention. And as anybody
Mhm.
who is parents of a teenager or a young child knows, if you can provide something quote unquote educational that
Right.
grabs their attention, oh, that's important. That's something special. And
Mhm.
if that's something that it turns out that for whatever reason I'm good at, I'm gonna keep doing it because now now more than ever, I I cannot say with enough emphasis how important education is in any way, shape, or form. I think that is the key, is that we know that the key to an informed citizenry, into informed human beings, into critical thinkers, which again, we need now more than any time before. We need a new generation of critical thinkers, of
Mhm.
people who have an understanding of the scientific method, that understand that oftentimes a path forward involves failure, but understanding from their failure and moving forward, we need that more than ever. And that's what I want to do. I want to educate everybody. I want to educate everybody, but particularly want to educate young people to let them know and give them knowledge and help them become critical thinkers that may want to go into the STEM fields, may want to go into the medical field, the scientific fields. But even if they don't, they're going to come out of the experience of interacting with my videos knowing a little bit more
Mm.
and maybe learning critical thinking and learning about the scientific methodologies, but in a way that is going to entertain them. That's the hope. That's the dream. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're aiming for.
That's a great message, and I look forward to seeing what's gonna come out of the Dhody Research Institute in the future. I think that might be a good place, for us to wrap up on that.
I should mention too, we're in the process of doing a fundraising campaign. And so that's the big thing is I'm pretty good at a lot of things when it comes to this nonprofit. But one thing I always struggle with is fundraising. And
Mhm.
because I hate asking people for money because I'd rather I'd rather do anything else rather than that. But guess what? When you're a research institute and you're a nonprofit and you have a staff of one, you got to start doing that. But so yeah, we're doing a fundraiser, and we're hoping to raise money specifically to do more series of videos and to do this whole series where you have a whole new series that we're envisioning again, where we're going back to those liminal spaces of
Right.
science and medicine. We want to show people things that they didn't even know were a thing, that they didn't even know existed, and invite them into this world. But in
Mhm.
order to do that, we need donations from people. So if they check out my website at www.dhodyresearchinstitute.org, they can find places to donate if they are so inclined.
Excellent. I will include a link to your website in the show notes for sure.
Oh, thank you so much.
And Anna, this has been a fascinating conversation. You have such a compelling story, and I loved hearing at least a part of it because I know there's a
Oh,
lot more we could have talked about. So,
thanks so much. This was so
and
much
and
fun.
this was Anna Doty. Thank you. This was
Thank you.
great. If you're looking for another episode of the People of Pathology podcast to check out after this one, here's a clip from my interview with Dr. Lisa Minetti as she talks about working with the National Forensic Science Service in Belize.
They identified some goals, and she was able to help them meet those goals by creating this team of forensic scientists. And it was a really great group of folks from all different backgrounds. So Dr. Hamill was there, who's a pathologist. Nikki Johnson was there, who you've also interviewed, who's an amazing photographer, and
Yes.
a lot of other just great scientists were like in this team, and It was also all women, which was empowering to be a part of this team. But some of the goals that the National Forensic Science Service identified in Belize, they wanted help developing a forensic anthropology unit. They wanted some help with skeletal analysis. They wanted some training for all different types of folks that work in criminal justice and death scene investigation.
You can hear more from Dr. Lisa Manetti in episode 167. All right, big thanks to Anna Dhody once again. It has been quite a ride over these 2 episodes. There were 2 overarching themes of part 1, which were related in a way. The first theme was things don't always go according to plan. And the second was when things don't go according to plan, it's those unexpected opportunities that can lead to the best results. Here in part 2, we have a little more of those 2 themes, and we've added a third. How unexpected opportunities can lead to having an impact on other people. One of the primary goals of the Dhody Research Institute is to provide content that is both entertaining and educational. Anna's previous work demonstrated the power of engaging videos to spark interest in medical and scientific topics. Her videos became popular for their quirky and informative approach, allowing viewers to learn about unique medical specimens in a fun way. With the Dhody Research Institute, Anna plans to expand on this concept by introducing a new series called What's That For? This series will invite viewers to guess the purpose of various medical objects, fostering curiosity and encouraging interactive learning. Then, she will delve into the stories behind those objects, providing deeper insights into their historical and scientific significance. In addition to focusing on medical objects, the Dhody Research Institute aims to highlight the diverse career paths available in STEM fields. Anna talked about the importance of informing young people about the various opportunities within medicine, forensics, and science that they may not be aware of. By showcasing different professions and the training required for each, she hopes to inspire the next generation of professionals in these fields. Anna's vision includes interviewing individuals who work in niche areas of science and medicine, thereby demystifying these careers and making them more accessible to a broader audience. This approach not only educates viewers, but it also encourages them to consider pursuing careers in STEM, helping to address the current attrition rates in these fields. The Institute is conducting a fundraising campaign aimed at raising money specifically for the production of new video series and educational content. You can find a link to the Institute's website in the show notes if you're interested in donating. The establishment of the Dhody Research Institute represents a significant step forward in Anna's mission to educate and engage the public in the fields of science and medicine. Like Anna said, now that she knows the impact of her videos, she feels a responsibility to continue this work and to do it well. You can find out more about Anna and the Dhody Research Institute by following the links in the show notes. Don't forget, you can follow this show on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at People of Path, or just connect with me on LinkedIn. Thank you for continuing to share the show with others. Together, let's inspire the next generation of pathologists and laboratory professionals. This show is a member of Health Podcast Network. Thanks for listening. I'm Dennis Strank, and I'll talk to you next time on the People of Pathology podcast.